Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the Spiritist Talk series, promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation and occurring every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today, I am delighted to host this talk by our special guest, Ligia Carvalho, who will be discussing a most fascinating topic for today, and one might say tomorrow, reincarnation. Before proceeding with today's talk, I would like to give a quick reminder to please send in your questions for this morning's presentation using the chat window. Ligia has reserved time to address your comments and questions once she concludes her presentation today. Now, we are looking forward to an engaging time with our speaker, Ligia Carvalho. She is the secretary and coordinator of the Spiritist Education Department and bookstore for the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey, which she co-founded and coordinates with a group of friends. She is an active participant in the U.S. Spiritist movement as a speaker. She is also a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, serving as their Family, Youth, and Children Spiritist Education Director. Professionally, she is a licensed therapist with more than 15 years experience working with children and adolescents with behavioral and mental health problems, and as a grief and bereavement therapist. This morning, Ligia will discuss the concept of reincarnation and its implication in our lives. But we all know, so please give a warm welcome to our dear sister, Ligia.
Thank you so much, Bradley, for such a warm welcoming. Thank you, everyone who's watching in this beautiful Saturday afternoon. We appreciate you being here with us for what we hope to be an enlightening lecture, where all of us can come up with something positive. So the topic, as it's stated, is reincarnation. And I think one of the first things that I sort of wanted to address is that although we strongly discuss and associate reincarnation with Spiritism, it is not a creation of Spiritism. It's not a concept that was developed or evolved with the Spiritist doctrine. In reality, if we stop to think the evolution of religion itself in the world, reincarnation has always been a part of it. It has always been associated or linked to religion philosophies and development throughout the centuries. If we take a look in Egypt, right, the pharaonic nobility, they accepted without restrictions the belief of the survival of the dead. They build their sphinx, they build their rituals. The Hindus, they also had a concept of death and life after death, where they had several floors of, if you did well, you go to the floor above. If you don't do so well, there's several departments that goes below. The Chinese also declared the understanding, the belief that depending how you did in life, you also survive in the after death. And there's many other concepts that brought us the understanding that life is continuous after we have had this experience. We can even go further, the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas in the Indian culture, Pythagoras in Greece, Sophocles, Aristotle, Plato, so many others have brought us these ideas, even under different names. If you think of the Druids, Polynesian, Hebrews, under resurrection, so many different ways of looking at the concept of reincarnation. So the focus that we're going to be taking today is not to prove the existence of reincarnation or what is the proof and science behind it, but working on the premises that we do believe that reincarnation exists, and it is a reality. How does that implicate into the everyday living that we experience? How does that impact our own choices and behaviors, and how does it help us to better interpret our lives? So the whole concept of reincarnation for us as a better point of reference, it starts when Nicodemus is talking to Jesus, and he's questioning Jesus with regards to these concepts. And he asks him, how can a grown man return to his mother's womb, right? Because Jesus had told them, no one can see the kingdom of God unless is born again. So for Nicodemus, the concept of being born again had to be limited within this one life experience. So for him was, if I'm born from my mother's womb, then I have to return to my mother's womb to be born again. once again demonstrating the lack of understanding about the continuity of life, which is not stuck to this one existence, but instead to the concept of multiple existences. And Jesus replied, he said, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless is born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to the Spirit. You should not be surprised at all by saying, you must be born again. So Jesus already established this concept that we all, whether you consider yourself an eternal being, a spirit, or whatever perspective you're taking, we all must. And he didn't say it's to your benefit, it's good, we'll consider it. He said we must, meaning it is a rule, it is an expectation that we're all going to be born again. But the interesting thing is that even in that time, he's speaking with Nicodemus, which was one of the, he's in the Jewish ruling council, meaning somebody who understands the law. And he brings up the question, if you, who's an Israel teacher, do not understand these things, even when I tell you the truth, how can I tell you things of more relevance and importance if you can't understand these basic concepts? So it's interesting that Jesus presents the idea of reincarnation as a simple and make sense concept. And this is sort of where we're going to focus, understanding why does it make sense? What is the belief behind the benefit and truly the existence of such a concept of reincarnation, and how does it benefit us? Not because we're self-serving, that is not the point, but Spiritism is a philosophy that is constantly helping us achieve personal betterment. And we don't mean professional, we don't mean physical, but instead spiritual betterment, emotional betterment. It's always looking towards the inner transformations. It helps us evolve. And how is the concept of reincarnation such a concept? How is that understanding a tool that can help us achieve that? So basically speaking, reincarnation is to be reborn in a physical body. We are all, the ones that are listening, are physical bodies. We are all reincarnated, right? So we're here in this body. And basically, our spirit, our soul, is linked to this corporeal life, to this physical body, which is newly created for this incarnation, and it has nothing to do with previous existences. It is not as if my body will resurrect, that in the next life, I'm going to have the same body. No. What we understand, and part of that phrase that Jesus said, I have to look here. Unless it's born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to the flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to the Spirit. So it's very important to understand when understanding what reincarnation is. And I think that's a part that sometimes becomes a little confusing is our spirit had a moment of creation. We were all created by God. We are a continuous existence. We are individualized. When my body dies, when I disincarnate, my spirit remains the same. The understanding of who I am, the abilities that I have achieved, the emotional and intellectual and moral successes that I have acquired. So I continue to exist as this independent individual. My body, however, it doesn't. Once I disincarnate, my body goes through the process of going back to nature. And when I do reincarnate, my spirit is the same, but my body is different. And we'll talk more about it. How is it that I don't remember prior existences? How is it that I don't remember other reincarnations? We'll get into that. But it's important to understand that body and spirit are two separate concepts. The body is like a coat. It's like the shirt. I take it off. I put another shirt. I don't cease to be me, but my body changes. So reincarnation in reality is a transitional state for all of us. Right now, it's a moment in time. This existence, this life is a moment in time of my fullness as an eternal spirit. And that is important. That's part of the consoling part of the reincarnation is because it helps us to understand that whatever I'm experiencing now, and usually we're making these reflections when we're going through struggles and difficulties and sorrows, it is temporary. It's not eternal. Whatever I may be dealing with now, it's sort of like, it's a moment, and we're going to discuss it, why we go through these things, but it's not forever. And that gives us consolation because we know that whatever these struggles is, it's time limited. At some point, that struggle, that challenge, that sorrow will come to an end, because being incarnated and reincarnated is a transitory, it's transitional for all of us. And essentially, it's an opportunity that's given to us so that we can practice our free will. We talked about differentiating between the spirit and the body. So the spiritual life, that's where really we live. That's where our true existence is. That's what we truly can call home. Physical life, like we said, it's transitory, and it's moments and times, it's experiences to teach us something. So being reincarnated and having this opportunity, it's a gift of God to help us put into practice the concepts and the teachings that we have acquired as eternal spirits, and to be able to develop the perfection that lies within. When we were created, distinguishing body and spirit, we're created simple and ignorant, meaning when God created us, he put into us the aptitude, the ability for total perfection. Whatever it is that's required to be perfect and to be divinely happy. And I say divinely because humanly happy, it's a totally different concept. But divinely happy, it's all within us. And we have to develop and we have to grow these skills so that we can work towards achieving perfection. So reincarnation, it's one of the means. It is the means by which we come into being. And in this life experience, we face certain situations, some quite comfortable, others quite difficult, but all of them to expose us to something where we can exercise our free will and therefore really develop the ability to understand God's law and live by them. It's sort of like today. I know I shouldn't lie. I know I shouldn't hate. I know I should forgive. But I'm speaking for myself. Although I know that's the right path and that's what Jesus taught me, I cannot always do it. Sometimes I struggle. Quite frequently I struggle. So it's a working between what my heart and my mind tells me the proper way of being, and then what my imperfections and my tendencies push me to be. And I really work hard to try to bring balance and not let my imperfections and my personal preferences, be angry, be distrusting, be vindictive, get a hold of me. But instead, I try to subdue those imperfections and hopefully change them towards forgiveness and understanding. So reincarnation are these moments where we exercise our free will and our understanding of God's law, modeling, after Jesus Christ and some other beautiful examples that we have in our society, not just within the Spiritist movement. I mean, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, they're such big examples for us. So utilizing these examples to help us see what is the best path forward. So essentially, reincarnation really helps us to live and see the application of God's law of justice and progress. Through each reincarnation, we learn a little more, we overcome a little more, and we work towards progress. But also the law of justice, which we're going to talk a little more upcoming. So, reincarnate is a process. We can definitely count on reincarnating several, probably 100 times. I don't even know what the expectation would be. But essentially, we're going to reincarnate as many times as needed for evolution. We'll talk about Jesus being the only perfect being that walked on this planet. But Jesus was not born perfect. He grew what we call on a straight line, making the right choices, responding in the proper ways, and achieving perfection. So he too had to go through the process that we are going today of experiencing challenges and comfort experiences and so forth in order to be able to evolve into a perfect being. He wasn't born that way. So if we see reincarnation, really, it's a perfect demonstration of divine justice because it allows all of us, every single person, to have the same rights, the same opportunities, and the same experiences, with the understanding that we are free to choose how we act, but we must deal with the consequences of our choices. So, yes, I can do whatever I want, but if I make a wrong choice, consequences are going to be difficult. If I make a good choice, consequences are going to be positive. And I think that's a lot of what distinguishes the experiences, the individual experiences of each person. So when we think about reincarnation, in the posthumous work of Allan Kardec, there's a chapter that's called The Path of Life that gives us a perfect example. So he says that this man, he was walking this path, and that was his path. And all of a sudden, he comes and he faces him, he's facing himself with this huge forest full of trees and thick. And as he starts walking into it, it's getting darker and more difficult to walk through. But he understands that he needs to get through it to get to the other side, because there's no other way to go. The path, it's encompassed by this huge forest. And it's such a huge struggle. And he feels like, he's working through it. He's getting cut. He's getting hurt. He's falling. He's afraid. It's cold. It's dark. And then eventually he starts seeing some light, and he's getting across. And he sees the path, up in front of him. And he's able to leave that forest. And as soon as he steps out, he's so exhausted and tired and injured. And he feels like that process took forever. He's like, I can't even account for how many years I must have been there. And he's slowly but surely walking, and the knees are healing, the feet are healing. He's in a lot of pain, but he gets back on the up and up, and he continues to walk. And guess what? Another forest. In the same process, he continues to walk, another forest. But this time, it's been a few forests. It's like, I already know this. I already know this vegetation, or already know how to cut this branch, or how to take this tree out of the way, or how to account for certain things. And the more he goes through the forest, the easier he gets. And at some point, he's like, oh, that was quick. I'm already through it. I'm on the other side. And then eventually the forests are changing, and they become not as difficult. And as he continues to walk, he finally gets to the top of a mountain, and he reached the peak in his final destination. And the interesting thing is, in that moment when he's up in the hill, in that mountain, and he looks back, all those huge, tiresome, exhausting, challenging, difficult forests, and some of them not because they were painful, they were just difficult. He wasn't aware, he didn't know the environment. And he looks back, and they're tiny little specks of darkness against the long line of his journey. And there's a wise man there at the top of the mountain. And he asks, what does that mean? How am I to understand this? And the wise man turns to him and say, reflect on your journey. How was it in the beginning versus towards the end? And he's able to understand that each time that he went through a forest, he learned some new skill and some new aptitude that made it easier for the next time. And that in reality, now that he looks back, those experiences, they seem so, I don't want to say irrelevant, but so minute and quick in comparison to what they felt like when he was going through them. And that's our process of reincarnation. Why we're going through it in this lifetime. This lifetime feels quite, hopefully a lot longer for me, but it already feels quite long. And I've been through so much in my own experiences and my own challenges, to each its own. And like I said, I still hope that it goes very, very long, but it feels long, So I keep on thinking, can it go and feel like quick? And that's what it is. When we are in the spiritual world, where now it's not just this reality of who I am. Today I'm Ligia. My mind expands and encompasses the longevity of that path that I've been through. So the body doesn't allow me to remember, but when I am in the spiritual plane, I remember, and I can look back and see all those existences, and it gives me a different perspective. And now I understand, this, although it feels long, I know it's not. And I know although it feels difficult, I understand why and what I need to learn. So reincarnation, really, it's these moments in between our true existence that allow us to learn. I mean, for kids, when we're trying to help them understand, a lot of times we tell them it's like school. You live at home with your family and your parents, but you go to school And each year it's a new grade. After first grade is second, after second is third. If you don't do well in third, you repeat third grade until you're able to go to fourth. And maybe you go to fourth, but you need a little extra challenge in a specific subject. So you do a little extra on that subject. And that's how it is. Our real life is not in school. Our real life is in the world with our family and friends. So our real life is in the spiritual plane. But reincarnations are those teaching moments, are schools to help us progress and grow. So, I talked a lot about reincarnation, but in summary, reincarnation is a necessity. We have to have a means to practice, just like we exercise our muscles, to practice our abilities to evolve those emotions of forgiveness and understanding and patience, but also to evolve our intellect. As you study spiritism, you learn, we use analogy of the two wings. In order for a bird to fly, it needs to have two wings. The wings of perfection and growth is intellectual and moral. You need to be morally evolved, but you also need to be intellectually evolved. The only issue is that when you evolve intellectually and not morally, that's when you run the risk of creating lots of errors and mistakes. Like we've seen in society, very intelligent men and women that have made really bad choices. But when you evolve morally, it allows you to utilize your intelligence for the good, but they don't walk hand in hand. So it's a necessity. The primary purpose is, like we discussed, to achieve perfection. Our goal is to grow and evolve and become better. But there's also that part of the law of justice that we talked about. And when you read the Spirit's book, question 989, it asks the following. Is sincere repentance during life sufficient to extinguish a spirit's wrong and enable it to merit God's grace? Meaning, if I make repentance of my mistakes while in this lifetime, is that enough? And they respond the following. Repentance helps to improve the spirit, but the past must nevertheless be expiated. So yes, you make a mistake. It's the first step to recognize that you made a mistake, to feel remorse, regrets, repentance, to apologize. But then you have to make amends. You have to make corrections. And it's sort of like, I like to use the example. You have a bag of rice, and I speak rice because rice is tiny little grains, and you drop it all over the floor. You forget, you're regretful, you're apologetic, you recognize that you made the mistake. That's well and good. Now go clean it up. And we have to clean up every single tiny grain that has spread through our kitchen. Some are underneath the fridge, some underneath the cabinet, others got somewhere else, but we have to collect them all. So that's sort of the concept of reincarnation. The first step is to acknowledge and be regretful of your mistake or the bad choices that you made. The next step is make amends, make correction, and have the opportunity to be exposed to a similar situation so that you can choose differently. It's really a process of applying concepts. So remorse is great, right? Because we acknowledge, and that means that we are also working on our intellectual intelligence, one of our two links, because now you can discern between good and evil, right and wrong. Maybe before you didn't have the distinction, but you made a bad choice that brought negative consequences or suffering. And now you realize, oh, if I do that, that's not good. So we are evolving and therefore developing our understanding. Expiation, like we said, we in some ways experience what we made others go through so that we can learn and empathize. And there's different ways. The law of God is a law of love and charity above all. So it's not necessarily that I killed, I must be killed. I cheated, I must be cheated on. I abandoned, I must be abandoned. Because remember, ultimately, it's not about the experience per se, but about the triggers and the motivations behind that experience. Why did I abandon? Why did I murder? Why did I steal? Why did I lie? Why did I cheat? And those reasons are different for every single person. Two couples that experience unfaithfulness, the reasons are going to be different. So it's not just judging the act, but judging the intentions behind the act. And that only our conscience, my own conscience, not of what my partner or my family or my friend, but what I did. And basically God, he has the ability to really see to our conscience. And those two things are going to really be the weighing factors for the planning for our next existence. So when we say expiation, experiencing what we made the other experience is working on those triggers and the motivations of why we did certain things and what it caused on those people so that we can move forward and learn. And then, the other part of making amends is also the experience of a try, in the sense, to do good to people we injured, to really make up for our mistakes, for our bad actions. So reincarnation really allows us to purify our spirit while bettering ourselves and bettering, sorry about the tongue tied here, those around us. So, and there's another important point that they also make when we're learning and studying spiritism, is that to not reincarnate is undesirable because the spirit remains stationary. So if we don't reincarnate, we stay status quo. And, status quo can be good right now, but give it a couple of months, give it a year, give it a century. At some point, the status quo is no longer satisfying, because I may stay stagnant, I may stay put, but all those around me, they wouldn't. They would move one way or another. They would progress one way or another. So the inner, need for growth, because once again, when we're created simple and ignorant, we were built with all the potential of perfection and also the desire for better, for more. So God did fire the spark of what life could be so that we have the motivation to achieve and go for it. So if we don't reincarnate, we basically don't progress, and we're kind of stuck in a physical state. And that doesn't bring happiness, because I can guarantee in this planet that we are existing, there's no true happiness. There's no complete happiness. There's relative happiness. And at some point, the relative happiness won't be enough. So it's very important that we understand, when we appreciate the existence of the concept of reincarnation. And that's what I said. How does that apply? How does that affect us? So when we understand that it's a moment in time, whatever the challenges are not forever, whatever the separation is not forever, because if you reincarnate, that means there's life after death. So whoever has gone before us, we will see them again, because one day we will be gone too, and we're going to join them somewhere in the spiritual plane. So life doesn't separate us all. And, it's truly this opportunity for us to make better choices. We're not going to achieve perfection. That's the other thing. We mentioned in the beginning, reincarnate several times, several hundred times, probably several thousand times. Maybe somebody can tell us what's the perspective. I really don't know. But anyway, what we do know is we don't also reincarnate just on planet Earth. We have the opportunity, or we may have the need, to reincarnate in different planets. Spiritism also teaches that all planets are populated with spirits. Obviously, life there, just like on Earth, it's compatible to that environment. But yes, we may, as we evolve, move to more evolved planets. Right now, from my perspective, I'm just hoping to stay on planet Earth and not be moving to a lower planet. And I say that why? Because we talked about, the planet Earth itself also is evolving. And that's a whole other topic that we're not going to get into. But yes, so as we evolve as people, as spirits, our planet also evolve and grow. And there is life in other planets, and we could live in other planets if there were a need. Sometimes we have evolved spirits that go into a planet less evolved to help bring new science and technologies and teachings. Others go for expiation. Remember, learning to appreciate things. So somebody who maybe took advantage of some of the easiness of life or comforts of opportunities, they may go to a less evolved planet to experience the hardship. But most of us, just being on Earth itself, we see this planet as one that there's such disparity of access, you think about evolved countries that have medicine and science and resources and transportation and clean water. And then we see other countries that they don't even have clean water. They don't have food. They don't have housing. They don't have access to medical services and basic needs. So just within the planet Earth, we have enough disparity that we can experience many other different living existences to help address our needs. Another point that comes a lot when we're talking about reincarnation is memory of the past, forgetting the past. And I know a lot of people really enjoy or are interested in, speaking and learning about their past and trying to figure out their previous existence. But one thing that we learn is that the temporary forgetting of the past, it facilitates new beginnings because it allows greater possibility of making amends and cordiality. So we call the veil of forgetfulness. That's one of the terms that's used that teaches us that remembering the past is not necessarily a positive or beneficial thing. In many ways, most frequently, if we try to force a memory from the past, it is more harmful than good. Why? We talked about, reincarnation have the purpose of helping us grow and learn, have us learn and go through what we made others go through, and also make right to those that we have injured in the past. So if I have harmed or hurt someone in the past, and now I need to make amends, if I harm that person, I probably did it because there was some differences of opinion or of emotions. I probably didn't like that person. Or if not, at least I feel probably very embarrassed. So having to live with that person to make amends may be quite difficult. Or maybe there's emotions of mistrust or fear or anger. And it may really make the process more challenging and unsuccessful. So we will go through a few examples and talk about the role of reincarnation family ties. But the bottom line is, remembering our past, it's usually not a positive thing. And when it does happen naturally, it's a planned process by the spiritual plane, and it serves a specific purpose. It is not recommended that people go seeking out these remembrances. And one more thing here. So remembering the past would disrupt the social relationships and would be a barrier to progress. So we see that truly that curiosity to know who we were, it's more harmful than good. And what we learn too is I don't need to remember what I was, who I was, what life I had. I can simply try to interpret my current life and get to know my own predispositions to know what kind of person I was. If I'm facing many challenges in the realm of health, if I'm facing difficulties in the realm of family or career and profession or personal identity, whatever the realm is, that lies the area that I need to work on, because these challenges normally is an opportunity for me to work on an area that is unbalanced, that is unfinished, where maybe I have lingering things. So how can I best serve the area of my life to try to bring a healthy lifestyle, to try to bring a positive mentality, whatever the situation may be? If it's bringing me sorrow, distress, uncomfortableness, challenges, that means that's an area for me to work on with the hope, with the objective of bringing the message of Jesus Christ of peace, inner peace, tranquility, balance through his message. So one of the stories, and unfortunately this book is not translated, it's called Psychiatry, Face to Face with Reincarnation. It tells a story of this young man who was 26 years old, and he had a very dedicated family, devoted mom, devoted dad. And honestly, he was very attached to his family. He was 26 and he had been drinking since he was 20, and he developed a really bad case of alcoholism. They had tried everything, different treatments, different programs, even religion, and he just couldn't get over that. In spite of all the support of this very healthy and supporting family, And like I said, even him, he was a good kid. Good manners, was able to conversate, had education and professional goals, but he suffered. He struggled with not being able to stop drinking. So they took him to, in this book, it's really based on the stories of, in Brazil, there is this psychiatric hospital that is a spiritist psychiatric hospital, and it's linked and like a collaborating facility with the spiritist center that they have there. And in the spiritist center, through the mediumistic meetings, they help and support whatever means they can some of those patients. And in one of the mediumistic meetings, they learn the past of this young man. And for the interest of time, I'm going to summarize it, but essentially, in a prior reincarnation, he was a very wealthy young person. He had inherited a huge fortune, and he was very wealthy. And this man, around his age, befriended him, and in this process, introduced his sister, who both this new friend and his sister had a very illegitimate lifestyle. A lot of vices, a lot of partying, a lot of irregular sexual behaviors. And she seduced him. He fell in love with her, and he married her. As soon as he married her, the brother and the brother-in-law and the wife basically started using his money, started spending his money every day, kind of pulling him more into this lifestyle, convincing him, attracting him to be in that kind of lifestyle, gambling, spending money, and so forth. And eventually, when the money was gone, the brother-in-law and the wife left him. He felt so desolate. He felt so depressed, and actually used, and he really cared for his wife, that he tried to commit suicide. Unfortunately, the means by which he did didn't take effect right away. And he was hospitalized, and it took him about a week eventually to pass away. When his brother-in-law learned that he had tried to kill himself, he was so filled with remorse and regrets. Remember the question 999 from the Spirit's book? He stayed day and night at his bedside, taking care of him, trying to help him, trying to deal with his pain. But unfortunately, like I said, he didn't survive. And after a week, he passed away. The brother-in-law was so consumed with grief and regret that he swore, on the expression saying we swore on his grave, right? But he swore to himself to forever try to make amends and protect and take care. So when he disincarnated, the brother-in-law, and he was in the spiritual world, that need, that regret, that desire to make amends, to make it right, was so strong. His remorse of being, so mean and inappropriate and taking advantage of him was so strong that he committed, he promised to be there to support him and help him and do whatever he needed to be. So in the current reincarnation, he came as the father. And this man, the one that was, used and so forth, came as his son. And even though he didn't have the full recollection, he didn't remember his past life, that proximity with the man who's now his father was a devoting, loving, forgiving, understanding, dedicated father. Because remember, he did regret. He wasn't perfect, but he regretted his mistakes. So that proximity, that being close to him, reminded him intuitively. He didn't have to remember, he didn't have to have a recollection, but it was enough to intuitively remind him of what he had done. And that anger, that situation of unresolved conflict resulted in him drinking. And it was a way to punish and a way to forget. So obviously, the treatment team didn't come and tell them what it was. Once they understood the concept of what was the underlying conflict in relationship, they worked through therapeutic means, therapy of forgiveness. And after, they did the whole therapy and everything else, they worked through this process and helped him to identify those underlying emotions and get to a point where he forgave and understood and befriended and trusted his father. So, a long journey of reconstruction and relationship that now young man of 26 was able to overcome and recover from his alcoholism. He didn't have to remember, the team didn't have to tell him about his past life, but because they knew the underlying triggers of it, they were able to work through it. And just a big parenthesis, that's generally how it happens in our life. Not generally, but that's how it happens in our lives. You think of the relationships and the dynamics within our families. Some people that I like, some people that I don't like, some people I get along with, some people I don't, that you don't know where it comes from, but sort of that kind of reactionary, automatic emotions and feelings and thoughts. In the same way, if you're seeking treatment, whether it's therapeutic, for therapy, or you're going to a doctor, you have to remember we always have our guardian angels, and we always have those people around us that in the spiritual plane, they're trying to help and support us, and that will intuitively help every single professional, every single helping hand, whether it's a friend to give you a good word, whether it's a coordinator at the center who's, giving you a moment of his time to give you some guidance, whether it's your therapist, your oncologist, your doctor, your pediatrician, somebody, something, they may just kind of, give you direction. And that may be the defining factor to help you or not in making a change in your life or finding the path of recovering or getting better. So we all have these experiences. We don't have to remember past lives. So once again, the clinical team work on the underlying feelings of anger, distrust, and the need to forgive. So if we move on with our lives, trying to work from that perspective, understanding that each reincarnation, it brings an opportunity for growth. I think the one thing that we have to think very strongly, I won't lie, and myself sometimes have wondered, why God? Or why this? Not believing in God, but I think was more like an inner scream of like, oh God, if I just knew why, I would work on it to get it over with, right? But that's ultimately, even each life experience, each situation, there is a why, there is a purpose. And if we are able to kind of focus and understand, God does not make mistakes. He does not. So whatever we are experiencing, there's a reason. And the process of reincarnation is so intrinsic, and I know our time is running, but I just want to give this one other example because I think it's very beautiful when we think of reincarnation, and it brings up so many issues, even for those that may be going through difficult times and contemplating suicide, the beauty and opportunity of reincarnation. So in this other book, unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but we do have it in English. And it is available at the USSF bookstore, Missionaries of Light. And it's all about the reincarnation process. And it talks about, and once again, I'm going to summarize very quickly because of the interest of time. There's this family, Rachel and her husband, Adelino, who are, basically the spiritual plane is in the process of, she's going to get pregnant. She's going to have another baby. So they're in the process of getting close to that moment where all the participating spirits of the family need to kind of come together to prepare themselves, because this is an assisted positive reincarnation. There's many different types of reincarnation, some successful, some unsuccessful, some with beauty and support, others very difficult. But this one, it's one of those nice situations. And in summary, Rachel and Adelino, they were partners in another life, and the son-to-be, Segismundo, he murdered the father. And after he murdered the father, the mother, without resources, without any means, ended up falling into prostitution and had a very difficult life. So Adelino had, held on to a sense of hatred and mistrust and vengeance towards Segismundo. And in the spiritual plane, when all of them were there, through the interventions of the spiritist guides and their mentors, they worked through it and made a plan. They made an agreement. They worked towards, again, forgiveness and trust. So Raquel and Adelina would come back, and Segismundo would come again as their son, where this time, through the bonds of love and family, they would learn to respect and appreciate each other and make up for the errors of the past. Rachel was all ready for it. But when it was coming close to that moment and Segismundo was being brought closer to them, Adelino started feeling that fear, that anger, that sense of mistrust, because he had been murdered. So he was, sort of agitated and irritated and having a difficult time. And it was actually interfering with the process. The spirits are teaching us that those emotions, those feelings of anger, irritation, mistrust were actually impacting his sperms, and they were making them unable to bring life. So he was damaging the sperm production in a sense that the sperm was useless, and they wouldn't be able to complete the reincarnatory process because of those feelings. So they went through a whole process of having a spiritual meeting while they were all sleeping to reapproximate Adelino and Segismundo and try to remind them of their agreement and their commitment to each other. Segismundo also was very scared. He was scared of failing, scared of going back to his old ways, scaring of Adelino not falling through and him failing. And through the intervention, they both committed to themselves again, to each other, to support each other. Adelino worked again on giving him the benefit of the doubt of forgiving him, and Segismundo in committing himself to be a good son and make up for what he has done in the past. And once that happens, Adelino changed his inner interactiveness of fear and anxiety and stress. And Segismundo too, who was very anxious and now doubtful, became more confident, so that Segismundo could go through his process of, it's sort of like a deep state of sleep, so that he can be linked to the physical body. And Adelino, so that his energies would interfere with the production of his sperm, because we need the sperm in order for physical reincarnation to take place. Very important here. During the physical act, the spirits aren't there. There's a whole process of emotional protection, of barrier, of privacy. We do earn our privacy. That is why it's important too, when thinking about our sexual life, how are we leading it? Is it healthy? Is it respectful? Is it safe? Because the safer, healthier, and more respectful, the more protective. The more vulgar or non-committed, the less protected. And then yes, we could have companions. So we have to think about with whom, how, place, intentions, emotions, commitment. It is not a simple act of physical pleasure. So after the fact, as we know, the sperm survives several hours and go through a whole journey before you get to the woman's womb. They also go through this beautiful process, which we don't have time to go in detail, but the spirits, the reincarnation specialists, because yes, there's a whole planning, there's a whole group of specialists in the spiritual plane to plan for our physical body, our tendencies. And what we learn is, yes, we get a lot of from our parents, hereditary factors, our physical hair, our eyes, our body shape, our voice, height, so many other things. Physical predisposition like cholesterol or diabetes or certain cancers, some mental health problems. But mostly what we learn is that our emotional state of being, our level of functioning as a spiritual being, our current self in a spiritual eternal plane is what's going to project into the physical body and give a shape. It's like a cake. You can have a round cake, a square cake, a triangular cake. The batter is the same, but the shape of the cake, it depends on the cake pan. So think of the batter is the genetic coding that we're receiving, but the final shaping of the body, it's based on that cake pan. And that's a result of our mental state of being. So we can't blame our parents. We can't blame heredity. And once again, that's where reincarnation comes to give us insight about what am I going through. And even if I don't remember why, I can understand the underlying reasons why. So anyway, going back to this case, because we got like 2 minutes. So the group of specialists of reincarnation, through a process that I can't explain, and they also said it's a very intricate, even Andres Luis, who is a spirit author, wasn't at a point of understanding. They scan all the different sperms to select the one with the best potential to bring the genetic component needed for what the experiences that Segismundo was going to need. And then what they did was they centralized energy so that sperm sort of gained motivation and strength. It was the first one to reach, the ovary, because, only one can kind of get in. Once that one gets in, no one else can get in. So there's a very intricate long-term process. So when I say God doesn't make mistakes, it's important for us to think of that. I think especially nowadays with for those of us who live in a society that is economically and technologically advanced, the access to medical interventions and surgeries and medication and experiences, how are we utilizing that? Are we taking advantage of it? Are we becoming codependent on it? Are we so detached from our reality and in denial, or not wanting to deal with our problems? Are we running from them by trying to change exterior things? And it's really important to think there's nothing wrong with these things. They're here because God allows society to bring it, to help us, to benefit us, to allow life to be a better process. But we have, once again, to think about the underlying process. It is not about our physical existence, it's not about our bodies, but it is about our spiritual existence and our spiritual growth. What do each experience brings us? What are the challenges that it presents us? What are the opportunities? Because a lot of times we think of the challenge, being sick or being this or being that. We also learn through spiritism that being physically beautiful, it's a very difficult challenge. I think a lot of people would say, oh, I want that. But they say, no, it's not easy, because thinking about the exposure that that person faces through the energetic movement that it causes, a lot of people looking, a lot of people desiring, a lot of people pressuring, there's always a downside to what we would think is something positive and beautiful. So the bottom line is, in this process, Segismundo came back, they were working on it, and they're going to have probably some challenges as a father and son. And they're going to have moments of distrust and conflict. But that's the whole point of it. If we have that, that means there's something to be worked on. Do I need to know what the problem was? Do I need to know who or what did what? No. But if I believe in Jesus Christ, I have faith in God, and Spiritism has brought these concepts to help me understand. Now I know that this reincarnation has a purpose. And if I work towards implementing the positive abilities of love and forgiveness and hope and understanding, whatever the situation may be, if I have increased those feelings within me and in my relationships, then I have done well and I have improved. And when, the time comes for me to say goodbye to this body and move back to the spiritual world, I can look back and say, maybe I haven't done everything I was supposed to, but I made progress forward. And I think that's what each life experience is meant for, to make progress forward. Personal progress, moral progress, so that we can one day be closer to the image of God and find that divine happiness that we're all searching for. I thank everybody for being here. Time has run away with us. This is such an interesting and very, complex concept. But just think of it. Life is temporary. Try to think of the teachings that you can take from it. Try to think how you can make yourself better and those around you. Don't think about what they do or did to you, but focus on, what am I doing to others and myself? Because that's what will determine my happiness in the spiritual life and my future reincarnation. May you all have a blessed day. Tomorrow in the United States is Father's Day. I wish all of you a happy Father's Day, and may you have a blessed weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ligia. You have brought much clarity and understanding to this transitional state of reincarnation and encouragement in the continuous life. At this moment, we will open for comments and questions from the audience. From Riasco, hi Ligia, great to listen to you. Although in our present stage, in a planet of trial and expiation, forgetfulness is a blessing. Will we be allowed more access to our past lives, especially of our negative acts as we progress?
Yes, absolutely. I think the main point that Spiritism brings is we all have the veil of forgetfulness, like I mentioned. And I think I made very briefly, but a distinction between trying to force a memory versus those that kind of come naturally. there are points in time, and well-known spiritists like Divaldo Franco, Raul, and so many others will give many examples where remembering the past has helped. And I know there's a spiritualist and the non-traditional therapies of remembering past lives. And other people also have normal memories. There's a scientist, psychiatrist, Ian Stevenson, who's well known for the work on past lives. So the difference is you're trying to force to remember or going specifically trying to seek the remembrance of past lives. The Spirit warns us against it as not being helpful and most frequently harmful. But if it comes naturally in a therapeutic session, in a moment, I don't know, of, we hear a lot of people that are under a coma, or they have experience of unconsciousness and they come back with a memory. Those were probably planned and intervened by the spirits as an opportunity for some learning and for some progress. And I probably believe as we evolve as spirits and as a race, that memory will probably increase and may facilitate. But at this moment in current stage, the safest and healthiest is not to provoke the remembrance, but if it comes naturally, to work with it. So I cannot hear you, Bradley. I don't know if it's your mic or my mic.
My apologies.
Oh, there you go.
From Diana Smith, do you think we choose the family we're born into?
Yes and no. So at times, yes, we choose the families because we have the rights or the evolve. Basically, we have earned that right to choose the family. At other times, we don't. And I'll give two different examples. So a lot of times, there's spirits who are really struggling to make progress and they keep on failing the same mistakes. So I cannot recall the book right now, but there was this young man who struggled with substance use and he kept on falling into the same mistake. So this time they decided to approach this family, who was a very loving, emotionally and a spiritually evolved family, so to speak, was a good, stable family, to ask them if they would give him the opportunity to be in their family, to experience a different lifestyle, a different reality, surrounded by love and protection, with the hopes that that would awaken his desire to improve himself. So it was a stranger, so to speak, not a spirit from their spiritual family. And he did. He came into this family, and lo and behold, in spite of all the love and care and support, he once again failed and went through the path of dying of an overdose. The interesting part is that this time, when he passed away, when he disincarnated, and he saw how much sorrow and suffering he brought to this whole family, these people that had been nothing but loving and supportive and caring, and how much they really esteemed and missed him, and how sorry and sad they felt, he had such a sense of guilt and regret and shame. And that was that moment where those feelings awakened in him the desire for change. And then in his next reincarnation, he was able to now work with motivation to improve. So in this moment, he didn't choose the family. It was chosen for him as an intervention to help him progress. There are other circumstances where we are not allowed to be born within our family. Very quickly, one of the books of André Luiz, can remember, last time I can remember the book and somebody gave the recommendation, is also translated in English. But this couple, they were married. The husband, felt entrapped at some point. He didn't want to be in the relationship anymore. He had, basically, long story short, he wanted to kill his wife and move on with his life. His children were there, and through the intervention of spirits, by involving the act, protected the mom. He fled. Mom had a different life. She had very many struggles, but she evolved. He, on the other hand, chose a path of least resistance and had a very poor decision-making life. Towards the end, she reconstructed her life, and he murdered the wife's second husband. The next reincarnation, they tried to come together, but he wasn't allowed. after 2 reincarnations with her progressing and him being unfaithful and not doing well by them, she moved on and he had to reincarnate in a different life because her and the 2 daughters that they had and the second husband who later became the son, they all evolved. And he stayed in that same level. He didn't evolve. So at that point, he was not allowed to be born with them again. So even though he may have wanted, he didn't have the right. So at times we choose, at times it's chosen for us, and at other times we're just not allowed because we haven't earned it. So just think, you are in the right family for you. Whatever the circumstance may be, the spirit guides, through the law of Jesus, the laws of God, they chose the right family for you. If it's a wonderful family, be blessful, be happy, appreciate. If it's a difficult family, find the best way possible to try to make as much amends and as much friendships as you can. You may not do it all. It may be very small, but it's a step forward.
That's encouraging to understand that about the family that we are in. Very much.
Yeah.
We hear of spirits spending a very long time in the spiritual world, refusing to reincarnate. How and why this happens, and how does it end?
Well, I know it sounds cliche and silly. How does it end? Love. It is the ultimate feeling. And it's true. There are many spirits who choose to be in lower planes, who refuse to, return because they're afraid or because they feel guilty or because they don't want to face, what they're going to face. We hear in the literature cases of natural abortions because the spirit gets so scared or so regretful, and that's this state of mind causes the physical body not to withstand, and through an abortion they run away from reincarnating. So it's very complex, and there are many different examples. And why this happened most frequently is, well, all the time, is our imperfections, our unwillingness to apply our free will for the good results in consequences. Those consequences are negative. And like we spoke of, reincarnation is needed in order for us to put theory into practice. So we know that if in the spiritual plane, I regret the mistakes I made, the errors that I caused, the suffering that I brought onto other people, but now I know that through physical life, I'm going to have to face similar challenges and scenarios in order to really overcome that and improve. And some people, some spirits are just not ready or not willing or don't want. Or other times, their state of mind is such yet that they haven't awakened to this need or this desire to progress, that they're not able to sustain life. A very quick story, once again, is this daughter, very proud, very intellectualized, very scientific, did not believe in religion, did not believe in life after death, did not believe in reincarnation. And she chose a life of pleasures, in spite of her mom, who was always trying to guide her and protect her and teach her. But she didn't believe in it. So she felt that life was there for you to enjoy and to take as much pleasure as you can. And that's how she led her life. When eventually she passed away and is incarnated, she found herself spiritually in a very bad situation. Vices, broken marriages, relationships that were damaging and hurtful because she really was self-centered and did not really account for others. And in that moment, she suffered long, long years in a lower spiritual plane, until one day her mom was ready to reincarnate again, reincarnation. And her mother had still held on to desire to help her and to protect her and to allow her another opportunity. So before she reincarnated, the spirits worked through to help for them to have a meeting in the spiritual plane. Her mom was always around, but because they were in different levels, so it's like different stations, she couldn't see her mom. But this time, through spirit intervention, they were able to see each other. And at that moment, that awakening in her, the desire and the realization, I'm sorry, Mom, you were right. The things you said were correct. I made bad choices. I want to learn. I want to be better. And please, will you help me again? Will you teach me? And I promise to listen. And the mom totally, committed to doing it. The caveat here was she had not earned, and that goes also with the prior question, she had not earned the right to be her daughter again because of the mistakes that she had caused, the lack of appreciation for the situation. But what the spirits were going to do is mom was going to reincarnate, and then in the future, she would reincarnate as somebody who would be working in her mother's house. And through that really relationship where, boss or, authority over somebody that was subjugated to your authority, when that dynamic of relationship, mom would have a stronger position to be able to really teach her and support her and influence her in a way that in the past mom wasn't able to. So they were going to be close, but they weren't going to be daughter and mother. And the other thing too that they said was, your mom's going to go now, but you have to stay here still because there's a lot of negative energy that you have to process before you can be taken to a hospital setting or a better place. We're going to be here. We're going to support you, but you cannot move up until you process and cleanse yourself of these energies. So at that moment, the daughter started to receive help, but it had to be help in that level. She couldn't move up in level in the spiritual plane, and she couldn't reincarnate yet. And when she was going to reincarnate, she was not going to reincarnate as her mother's daughter, but as a server to be close to her mom, to be able to get her influence. So it's very interesting how reincarnation really teaches that we are all, children of God. We think that maybe that person who's not our blood, because there's a lot of this. I think most of us, generalize, we're very protective of our blood. I can say something about my family, but don't you dare say something about my family. But who is our family? Which is a question that Jesus said, who's my brother? Who's my sisters? Who's my mom? Who's my dad? My biological family is my biological family, but the real family is my spiritual one. And that may be my working partner. That may be my best friend. That might not be my sister or my son. So it really teaches, the reincarnation teaches us to love everybody, because honestly, we never know who truly is somebody that we love. So we can't be exclusive and prejudiced towards our family. We have to be all inclusive and love everybody, or try to. We understand it's not realistic.
You bring up two very good points, Ligia. One about family, who is our family, and also awareness that we are helped throughout our lives. We may not always be aware, but we are being helped. That is great. Question is, in which book is the chapter The Path of Life?
All right, so it's in Pashman's work. If somebody could in the comment confirm if we have that translated in English, because I used my version in Portuguese, I apologize. I'm looking at it right now. I apologize. Oh, I have it open here. This one doesn't have chapters. All right, I'll get back to you guys as I look for it, because I have it on my book. I don't have it tabbed. Oh, here. All right, so it's under the first part. There is a section that talks about negative influences. So it's entitled, it's like a sub-chapter. It's called The Path of Life. On the Portuguese version, this version here, it's page 187. Yeah. Redley, you're muted.
Okay. Thank you for that reference. Much, much appreciated. And our final question, can we focus too much on our mistakes and through that delay our progress, our growth in life, in this life?
Thank you. I think this is an excellent question. Absolutely. I think, and I'm trying to once again, we're talking about how this impact our life, especially nowadays. I think that at least in the United States, I can't generalize in all countries, but the United States, the impact of media and access to media has given everybody such a false reality. And I don't mean this as a criticism or judgment to tell anybody, but people's Facebook or TikToks, or it's always something happy, wonderful vacation. So we only see those glimpses of the beautiful moments. Little do we know that sometimes, and I can listen. I have a 3-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter. Our Christmas pictures look so happy and beautiful, but I will tell you, there was a lot of yelling and nagging and bargaining. Here, I'll give you candy if you just sit for a second. Anywhere, it was very frustrating because my 3-year-old wouldn't sit still. It's like they're looking all over the place. But eventually, after like 100 photos, we get one that we all like. So I think the media kind of portrays this sense of perfection. In magazines and things, everything is photoshopped, or everything is this, or if you don't have this, we don't. And we have developed such a false sense of reality. I think some ways everybody's life is perfect but mine. Then we end up focusing so much on what doesn't seem perfect. And when we do acknowledge our weaknesses or our challenges, we think is the worst thing in the world. And in truth, it's not. When we study inner transformation, I don't agree with the concept. Some people say, let's kill our shadow, so that we can grow our light. Absolutely not. I think it's the opposite. We need to learn to every deficit, every imperfection, every negative aspect of our lives. The moment we acknowledge it, that is the moment that we can stop engaging in it. If I don't know that I'm, impatient, which it would be hard not to know, but let's assume I'm constantly going to be impatient and hurting and stabbing and injuring others through my impatience and causing conflict. The moment that I realize, oh, oops, I'm impatient, that's the moment that I can make myself better. So I think we should celebrate the awareness of mistakes, because now they have freed us from ignorance, right? We're born simple and ignorant. It has freed us from ignorance, and now we can look for a path for self-improvement. And I think that's the shift in frame that we need to have is imperfections. Yes, they hurt, they may embarrass, but you know what? Now I can step forward. The moment that I know, I can improve. And I think we have such an experience of low self-esteem and low self-love that we keep on harboring on the mistakes instead of moving forward from them. So the moment that we can understand that everybody's imperfect, nobody's life is perfect, the beauty that we see in others is not necessarily the beauty that they live in, and also worry less about material life and outside experiences and appearances, but more about inner self and inner experiences, we will be able to overcome this detrimental side effect of really honing in on the negative when there's so much beauty and so much positive to be discovered. So the moment you find a weakness, you can directly find a strength. You just have to change your focus to the strength.
Thank you again very much, Ligia, and much appreciation to everyone who watched today's Spiritist Talk Live, and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Before we close our live today, I would like to remind everyone of the United States Spiritist Federation virtual course, Initiation into Spiritism, which is provided free of charge on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It is a self-paced course for those who would like to learn or review the basic principles of Spiritism, as published by Allan Kardec in 1857. Please avail yourself of this great learning opportunity by visiting the course page on the USSF website to receive the reminders by email. Ligia, before we close the live, would you please offer a prayer?
Most certainly. Master Jesus, as always, we thank you for walking the path to show us and guide us on the way. May we all follow your footsteps and learn to love one another and learn to love ourselves. May these teachings of today help us develop a great sense of tolerance and appreciation for life's experiences, but above all, the inner motivation to make changes towards that path that you have taught us, to make improvements, to take in the shadow and transform into light, to learn to forgive so we don't feel so heavy, and to learn to be patient and respect what you have determined for us with the certainty that those decisions, they were for our betterment, for our growth and our progress, with the intention of bringing us true happiness, spiritual happiness, and our material happiness. May we learn to respect your laws and make the effort to utilize them for the benefit of all. And we thank you for bringing us these teachings, for allowing Spiritism to be here so that we could better understand and make better choices for ourselves. Once again, may we also bless all of those that are here with us, all of those that couldn't be here. And tomorrow, when we celebrate in the United States Father's Day, through a symbolic extension of reincarnation, may we thank you for the blessing of life, which gives us the opportunity to make corrections, to find peace and reconciliation with ourselves. May we appreciate life, as difficult, as challenging, or as sad as it may be, and never allow the thoughts of suicide or sadness or giving up or desertion fill it. But instead, may we discover the seeds of joy in the relative happiness that life can offer us. May this happiness be extended to all of you so that you may have a blessed weekend and a blessed life. So be it.
So be it.